Hey guys, what's going on? Derek James, GovKidMethod here. And if you've been following, we've been doing a number of amazing interviews. And today we have another one of those amazing interviews. And this is going to be from an additional vantage point from contracting. But we have Kesha here today, and she has a lot to offer. I'm really excited to speak with her. She has a number of, career-based things and, primarily a focus in budget and financial management also to bring to the table, which I know all of us could probably learn a thing or two from in and of itself. But Kesha, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Kesha, I think we can just kind of get it started. Could you just introduce yourself a little bit, let everybody know a little bit of your history and share a little bit of your current role and responsibilities?
Absolutely. Well, I am Kesha Stowe. My background is actually in government contracting and financial management. I wear two hats, so to speak. So I'm in the military part-time. I'm in the National Guard, and I've served as a contracting officer, and my specialty in the military is in government contracting as well as financial management. And then in my full-time everyday job, I am a financial manager for a small independent federal government agency. In that role, I've also been drafted to be a contracting officer. So in that same agency, I also serve as a contracting officer, a warranted contracting officer. But it's a little bit unique because from that perspective, I just advise. I'm more in an advisory role now at the point in my career.
Okay.
So I train contracting officers as well as other individuals within that procurement, under that procurement umbrella, on the government contracting process. And if anything needs to be reviewed, audited, any of that within the agency, then I am your girl for that.
We're in good hands.
I've been working in government.
I already feel it.
Yeah. So I have been working in government contracting. I have over 10 years of experience in government contracting. I have worked in a contingency environment. So I've been deployed doing government contracting. And I worked government contracting from cradle to grave. So from the onset, selecting the vendors, to conducting the market research, to closing the contract out. So.
Love it. That's awesome. I mean, I know that, you're our person, and I was so happy to be able to get this interview with you and kind of share you with our community. I know that you've been a member of our community yourself for a little bit. So, when you reached out to me, I was really happy, really excited, because I know that you have the background and there's so much, and, we could probably have an interview for a few hours easily, although we're not going to do that. YouTube wouldn't like that, but I just know you're so rich with knowledge, and more importantly, those things that contractors, really are struggling to find, searching on Google and YouTube, trying to find resources. And even just, we're going to get into it, responding to, bids and solicitations. I know this is one of the number one things that folks are struggling to get into, or if they are in it, they're kind of getting stuck on something. So maybe that would be a good transition and segue for us. It's a question that I like to ask from your vantage point, which, I highly respect, over a decade in contracting. And guys, if you missed it, she's at the point of now where she's training and educating other contracting officers. So, pay attention to what she says, to say the least. Kesha, from your standpoint, what are some of the common mistakes, whether it's, kind of responding to RFP or market research, but I think we could just kind of focus on bids, RFPs, and RFQs right now. Are there common mistakes from a submission standpoint, or, a proposal, development standpoint, pricing, anything that stands out to you that you're finding as common mistakes that contractors, small business owners are doing from your side of the fence?
What I tend to see oftentimes is that when a solicitation goes out, it's that section called instructions to offers.
Amen.
And so in that section, it's going to give you everything that should be a part of your proposal. And oftentimes I see we may get a proposal, but it's incomplete. So we deem the vendor non-responsive because they didn't answer or submit all of the things that were a part of that proposal packet. So those are mistakes that I see often, because sometimes vendors don't realize that they've left something out. But when you leave something out, it's imperative. Here's why. Because if you think about a contracting officer that puts a requirement out on the street, it can be an unknown amount of vendors that are going to submit proposals, right? So say, for instance, a contracting officer puts something out on the street, they get 100 proposals back, right? All of this is timed. So if I'm getting 100 proposals back, I really don't have time to look through 100 proposals. What is the easiest way for me to get rid of some of those proposals? Now, I don't want to, but again, all of this is driven by time. I don't have 3 months to look at proposals. So when you are deemed non-responsive, you're the fastest proposal to go. I don't have to look at you any further. I don't have to give you any other consideration. So that's one of the common mistakes that I see with government contractors, especially those businesses who are new in the field.
Sure. And it probably goes without saying, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. Can you generally tell, and I don't know if you can answer this, but it just came to me. Can you tell the difference between kind of a contractor who knows what they're doing and this isn't their first rodeo versus a contractor that maybe this is their first, second, or third bid submission? Are you able to kind of tell that based on what you receive? Is there really that much distinct difference between the two?
Absolutely. We can generally tell the difference between someone who's done this a few times versus someone who's doing this for the first time. Now, the difference usually is minimal if the person who is bidding or the company who is bidding for the first time has done their research. And they know their field. Exactly. If they've done their research and they are an expert within their field, then the difference becomes minimal. But if they're jumping out there into a field they're not really familiar with, and it's their first proposal, it's noticeable. Because those common mistakes, such as not really paying attention to the instructions to the offerers and how you should be submitting your proposal and what should be included in that, are going to become obvious.
And I'm so glad that you went there, because I don't want to scare anybody away necessarily, because, I'm all for what we talk about in our community and my channel is, hey, you can get into GovCon, but I am the first one to say, hey, you need to be the expert. You need to bring it. You got to have some skin in the game. I'm all for people submitting their first bids. You got to start somewhere. And everybody in the community tries to bridge that gap for folks. But one, if you're not an expert in your field, you need to maybe, pause and go back and do whatever you need to do. I'm not going to get into the details of being a subcontractor or, just, going back and learning what it is you need to learn first. But it's minimal is what you're saying if the folks do their research. And that's what the encouraging thing is, guys, because, hey, you're not going to start out being perfect. And if you're waiting to be perfect to start, then you're never going to start, because you're never going to be perfect. So you do need to kind of, throw yourself into that deep end and just get started, but prepare as much as you can. And you may have a minimal difference between you and a contractor that's been doing it for the last 3 years or something like that. But that's okay. Don't let that stop you, but just make sure that you are doing your homework first before you try to do this. Otherwise, like Kesha said, there's going to be a pretty significant difference, and it may not be a great start of a reputation for your business with that agency to kind of, show how, green you are, or, that you're not following the instructions that are given to you. Do the minimum things that you need to do that we talk about on the channel, and you can really bridge that gap between you and maybe a contractor that's been doing it, like I said, for 3 years or more. So I'm really happy that you went there, because I don't want to discourage anybody. I want to encourage folks, but encourage them to go about this the right way.
Absolutely. And to add on to what you were saying, Derek, because even if it's your first time, right? Even if it's a contractor's first time submitting a proposal, if that proposal is good, even if you don't win, we pay attention to that, right? We note that, oh, they didn't get it, but they were really good. And so when we have something similar that fits within your area of expertise, a requirement that comes out in the future, we may send it over to you, right?
Sure.
depending on how that if there's a set aside in place, or depending on the threshold, the dollar value, and we don't necessarily have to go public, you know. So there are other opportunities that stem from you putting your best foot forward and just simply being present.
Guys, take note of that, okay? I'm taking note of that. You guys need to take a note of that. Hit the replay button if you missed it or you checked out for a second. Get back and listen to the last 60 seconds of what Kesha just said there. It's so important, and it goes right in line as a parallel with the strategy that we talk about. And Kesha, you know, weigh in this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're pretty much already going down the path that I go down. But it's so great to hear it from you. Is that, you know, there's this thing of like a lot of folks that are new, they don't know what they're doing. They'll go to beta.sam and they'll put in an NAICS code or something. They'll put in keywords. They'll start looking at jobs. They just go through the list. Okay, looks like I could do this. This sounds like it would be a good fit. However, there's no consideration and there's no strategy to the agency that they're looking to do business with. And I say that, all of that, to say this: there is no focus, because what we talk about on the channel and in the community is targeting and focusing on maybe 3 to 5 agencies, learning how those agencies do things, learn how to play ball with that agency. Because, you know, although it is government contracting, every agency really is different, and the different hoops, you know, vary at least a little bit from agency to agency. And if you don't know those intricacies of that agency, you're going to look like the outsider, because you're not really doing things and jumping through the hoops that folks who are being successful do at that agency. And again, all that context to go to, you know, kind of this point that you just brought up is, guys, if you are responding to bids in a targeted approach, say, you know, you realize that there's like the same 5, 10, or 15 contracting officers, contracting specialists that are, you know, reviewing bids, soliciting bids on beta.sam or GSA eBuy or whatever platform you're using, target them, you know, respond to their bids, get feedback, do, you know, ask for proposal debriefs when it's possible, attend the site visits. And Kesha, this is kind of where I want you to weigh in. Wouldn't you say that if you see a contractor who's working their butt off, doing all of these things over and over and over again, and if they're not winning, but maybe they're getting better, are they not at least demonstrating to you that they are eager to win your business and they're doing all the things, you know, over time that they eventually need to do to win their first contract?
Absolutely. I like what you said, Derek, about targeting your approach to selecting those businesses or those agencies that really buy what you're selling. That's the key. Every federal government agency has a mission. So you should find out what their mission is and find out how what you sell plays into their mission. And some of them even list their past requirements or new requirements out on their website. So it'll give you a feel for the things that they buy within their organization.
Yep. But if you're not targeting an agency, exactly to the point, you're going to miss out on all those little details, things that make all of the difference. If you're just scrolling and, hey, I want to bid on this, I want to bid on that. And, oh, it's for the Air Force, cool. If it's for, you know, Department of Agriculture, cool. Well, no, it's not cool, because what do you know about the Air Force or the DOA? You don't know anything until you've targeted them and you did a little bit of homework and research. It's like 1 + 1 = 3. There's a synergy that happens.
Absolutely. In addition to that synergy, right? Because we are so focused on these large scale contracts. And so oftentimes we forget those contracts that are up to the SAT.
The SAT.
And more often we forget about those contracts that are below the $25,000 threshold, right? That has to be publicized. Well, those contracts that are below $25,000 are usually, they are solicited, but they're solicited to a very small pool of contractors, right? So usually what happens is every office will develop their own internal vendor list, their database. And so they house vendors inside that list. So when they are faced with requirements and the dollar value is less than $25,000, and they don't necessarily have to go out and publicize through a government port of entry, then they'll reach out to those individuals that are on their vendor list, internal vendor list, to see if they could fulfill that requirement. Again, that comes from that targeted approach, being able to identify which agencies are buying what you're selling.
And that's really where I advise and encourage, and more than that, I urge anybody who's looking to get started, or who maybe already got started but they didn't do this. You need to go back and look at the numbers. I mean, you can go to USA Spending. There's a number of websites where you can follow the money trail based on NAICS codes and keywords and say, hey, who's buying the most of what you're trying to sell? Why would you not start there? You know, this is, at the end of the day, any business is throwing spaghetti at the wall until you hit something, and then you need to double and triple down on it. And that's why we do 3 to 5 agencies to target, because we don't know what's going to hit. But once something hits and we gain past performance with that customer or whatever, then you can start to double and triple down on that as a business strategy decision. But until that starts, like so much of our community is at a beginning standpoint, you need to find out who's buying the most, like Kesha is saying, of what it is you're trying to sell. If you don't have something to sell, then you've got this backwards. And that's where you need to take a step back and get an expertise, or realize you have an expertise or something. Be a subcontractor if you want. You don't have to. But all these things work. And then you bring that to the government, because remember, the government is your customer. You're there to serve them. It's not the other way around. They're not here to give you a contract. They're not standing in line to just give you a contract. You need to stand in line and do the work and jump through all the hurdles to have a chance to provide them a gooder service. And remember, like Kesha said, what is the mission of the organization? What is the mission of the agency that you're trying to serve, that you're targeting? Have a little pride and realize, hey, this affects the soldiers. This affects the other agencies that are supporting whatever it takes to run this country. Have a little pride and bring that to what you're doing, and realize that you're participating in something greater than yourself. Come to this with that attitude, instead of an attitude to take and to just win a contract. You're coming to contribute.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that echoes a lot with you, Kesha. But yeah, thanks for going down that little bit of a rabbit hole with me, because there's a few things in there that I absolutely loved. On that approach, on that standpoint, now you talked a little bit about it, but we can probably get back in line here with the evaluation process. I also want to ask you about market research. I forgot to, but I'll get back to that. But the evaluation process, you already talked about a little bit. But what really is the evaluation process? I know there's source selection boards. Sometimes it doesn't come to that. Other times it does. Can you just give the folks watching a little bit more insight on what happens when their bid is submitted? And is there anything they can do in terms of, follow up? When is it too soon to follow up? Are they nagging contracting? Even debriefs, and again, the evaluation process in itself. Could you just say a few more things about that?
Absolutely. So the evaluation process happens several different ways. Oftentimes you'll see LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable.
Yes.
That is the easiest way to do it, right? That just simply means that I have identified what is technically acceptable in my performance work statement or my statement of work. And then identifying what is technically acceptable when a vendor submits a proposal that is technically acceptable. Now, the only thing I'm looking at is price. So if I match your proposal up with what I deem to be technically acceptable, which is, I would have already identified that, and you will know what's technically acceptable. And I don't consider it not technically, and it's deemed not technically acceptable. Yep. Well, there you go again. You're automatically outside of the competitive range.
Thrown out. Yep.
Now, if you are technically considered, if your proposal is considered technically acceptable, the only thing I'm looking at that point is price. The lowest price will prevail. So that one is fairly easy.
And for those looking to start out, if I may, for just a second, oftentimes from a strategic standpoint, that's a good place to get started, because it's something that gets folks into the game and going through the motions, right? Maybe not having to worry as much about, like as past performance as an evaluation factor or a certain technical approach. You just have to be technically acceptable. There's not variations of degrees of, you're somewhat relevant or you're relevant or you're very relevant. It's just kind of like pass fail. Are you technically acceptable? Yes or no? If you pass, then we're just going to look at your price. This is sometimes a good place for folks to get started. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you don't really have to do anything extra besides ensure that your proposal is in accordance with the statement of work or the statement of objectives or the performance work statement. That's it.
Absolutely.
So another approach that we use is trade-offs. Trade-offs are where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because in trade-offs, what we're going to say is, well, we're going to evaluate you in these different areas. And it won't be a mystery. Those areas will be identified in the solicitation. It's almost like, you remember when you were in school, for those that are of us that are already out of school, remember when you were in school and you would have to write that paper and you got that rubric? And remember, the rubric told you how the teacher or the professor was going to grade your assignment.
Yep.
And it gave you a weight, a percentage next to it and that percentage told you how much of the overall assignment grade was based on that specific task or part of the project. Well, that's how trade-offs are projected. So in the solicitation, we'll say what those factors are. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. We'll also list sub-factors if there are sub-factors. The key is you will not get weights in your solicitation, but there are weights. So unlike your rubric that the teachers used to send out, you won't see the numbers on your solicitation.
Sure.
But the contracting professionals back in the office, they know what those numbers are. They're just going to identify to you which areas they're going to look at, they're going to consider as a part of your proposal. One thing they have to state in the solicitation is the relevancy of that, right? They have to say whether or not all of the factors are going to be, when all of the factors are added together, if they're going to be equal to price, if they're going to be significantly higher than price, or they're going to be less than price, right? But remember, it's all of the factors added together. So, for instance, back in the contracting office, they may be evaluating you on 4 different areas, not to include price. So they may be evaluating you on past performance, technical competency, they may be management, and your subcontracting plan. So those are the 4 areas that they may be evaluating you on, in addition to price. And so inside the solicitation, it's going to tell you that those 4 areas, when the total amounts, when they're added together, I should say, are going to either equal price, which means all 4 of those evaluation factors are going to be considered about the same as your price, or they're going to tell you if it's significantly higher than price. When they say significantly higher than price, what they're saying is, yeah, your price may be a little high, but if we deem those 4 factors that we're evaluating you on as high, if we give you high grades in those areas, then we may be willing to pay a higher price, is what they're saying. If those 4 areas are significantly lower than price, what they're saying is, ultimately, we're going to evaluate you in these areas and we're going to consider them. But ultimately, your price is going to get you over the hump. It's going to get you the award.
Right.
And
this is kind of where like a best value trade-off comes in. We talk about best value a lot on the channel, kind of a best value trade-off versus a lowest price technically acceptable.
Yes.
This is where relevancy and things get a little bit more, not dicey, but just a little bit more involved and complex. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. So I am talking about that best value, right? But so the key to that is paying attention to those factors, making sure that your proposal is being submitted in accordance with those factors, and keeping in mind how the contracting officer identified those factors were going to be in comparison to price, right? Because it'll give you an idea on if they're more concerned about technical competency or price.
Absolutely. And guys you're watching this. This is why I do so many, exactly what Kesha just explained. So good. And this is why I spend so much time on reading through bids on the channel here, because you need to extract this key information, and preferably you need to extract this key information quickly before you spend 3 hours reading through a 100-page RFP. I don't do that as a fun hobby. It's something that I do for work, and I'm sure nobody else finds it. Well, there's a few people probably that find it fun and enjoyable to read through a 100-page solicitation document, but I don't, and I know most people in the channel do not as well. So it's important to extract this key information, call it capture management, what have you, making quick bid, no bid decisions from the business development end of things, because contracting is telling you what is important to them. And this is why I do so many reading bid live videos, because go back and watch any of them. Within the first 15 minutes, I'm going to instruction to offers, section L. I'm going to evaluation criteria, section M. When I open a solicitation, the first thing I do is go all the way to the end, because I know I'm going to find out, hey, this thing is lowest price. So can I be at lowest price on this, or do I position myself as a business to being, a little bit on the higher end where I'm offering more value? If that's the case, I'm not going to waste my time looking at this thing, because I'm not a match for contracting what they're looking for. If it's a best value procurement, and I think, hey, you know what? I have 10 years of past experience. I've got a list full of government contracts I performed on. I've got amazing CPARS ratings. Well, you know what? I'm going to be in the best value game because I can afford to be, because I'm worth it, because I'm a contractor that has this long list of credentials, right? But if you're new, you're looking to get started in, you may not have all that. And so you may go for, LPTA procurements to get into it. It's really up to you. But my whole point is, and as Kesha has explained, contracting is telling you what is important to them. One is not good, one is not bad. Okay, there's no good or bad here. It's just, it is what it is. It's what's important and what's going to drive the most amount of competition to get the best value to the government, whether it's LPTA or best value. That's what's important. That's what you need to develop as a skill when reading these solicitations and extracting that key information, and do it quickly so that you don't spend hours and hours just to find something like that out. Like, hey, I don't have past performance. Well, don't you wish you would have known that within 15 minutes instead of 3 hours later? And that's something, this is a soapbox I go on all the time. And Kesha, you very much talked about the trade-off with best value that we talk a lot about on the channel. I think folks, they're starting to get it, but I think hearing it from, somebody like you instead of hearing it from me is definitely going a long way. So thank you for explaining that.
No problem at all.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that? Because, I won't spend too much time on it, but it's a great point.
Derek said, we write contracts. I've written hundreds of them, right? Half of them, I'm going to go with 66, 2/3 of them is mumbo jumbo. It's standard language.
Yeah.
Right? So out of those 100 pages, the only thing that may contain substance is maybe 20, if that. So a lot of that is just standard language. And the more you go through a solicitation and become familiar with the solicitation, you'll be able to pick up on those things. So even if you aren't ready to just jump into it right now, I would highly, 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 highly recommend that you go to beta.sam and that you look and kind of go through some of the solicitations that are already out there and just see what they say, and see, kind of play a game with yourself and say, okay, let me see if I can identify what it is that this contracting officer is looking for, or what it is, where are the evaluation factors? Let me see if I can identify the evaluation factors. Let me see if I can identify if this is LPTA or best value. Let me go in and see if I can identify whether or not this is a set aside. So just go to some random contract or solicitations and beta.sam and kind of play those games with yourself, and it'll help you familiarize yourself with the solicitation. All solicitations, I'm not going to say all because some of us don't write them very well, but all solicitations have a standard format. So what you find in section M in one is what you should find in section M in another one. So just become familiar with that.
And as you said, 20 of the 100 pages, 20% is really going to contain the substance that's going to answer most of your questions of how am I going to put this together? What is the strategy I'm going to use? And am I even interested in that? These 20 pages, statement of work, section L&M, maybe if they have some sort of pricing attachment, delivery cleanse, if you will, those things, you can read those right out of the gate. And that's really what you said. Make it a game to go to those things and see if you can figure it out, because behind a solicitation, I always say, there's a person. And it sounds silly, but you know what, guys, like, there's people in these offices. They have something that they need. They have a customer that has something that they need, and they're just trying to do things the proper way, have the documentation, the paper trail, the written justifications, all the procurement process, because this, at the end of the day, is taxpayers' dollars. So this has to be done, for you, to be a good steward of the tax money that comes out of your check every week or every other week. This is the process, but it's not an impossible one. Yes. And it's the same process 90+% of the time. So learning this process is going to behoove you, because every other week it's not a different process. Like it's the one process. So I absolutely love that. And I want to talk about, just for a second, because we're pretty much there already, and it's the number one thing that I have the pulse on, that is a problem, that is a challenge, that is preventing government contractors from doing this or being successful, or small business owners from getting into the game. It's proposal writing. And you may have the same feelings about it that I do, because, proposal writing, Derek, we just talked about proposal writing, right? Like what more is there to talk about? Maybe because like all those things that we just talked about, sections of L&M, that is what guides your hand for writing proposals for government RFPs. But it doesn't seem to be the way that people are approaching this. And that's why I think it's the number one thing that we need to help folks with, is this, because they're like, okay, well, that's nice to read all that stuff, but what do I write? And it's like, are you missing it? You need to clue in. This is exactly what you need to write. Can you just talk a little bit? Let me hear it from your mouth, a little bit about approaching proposal writing. I know we've been talking about it, but for government contractors and new small business owners, do you have 2 cents to say about that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Proposal writing. I'm gonna take it back to when we were in high school, right?
Okay. Love it.
And you remember how you started off with your essays? You did your brainstorming, you had your thesis, and then you had your 3 things that were a part of your thesis that you were going to touch on in your essay. And then you wrote a paragraph for each thing, each factor that you touched on in your thesis, and you had your intro and your conclusion, and pretty much that was your paper. So proposal writing is like that. So you have your factor, right? So let's start with past performance, because that's when I get questions on a lot. Well, I don't have any past performance. Okay. You may not have any past Let's get this out here. The only way you have no past performance is if you have not done any work ever.
Amen.
Now, you may not have past performance that is with a government agency. So what I try to tell people is, if you have past performance that's not with a government agency, stick that in there. I mean, nobody's going to blame you for that. Nobody's going to be like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to call this vendor non-responsive because they put this past performance in here and then it was not based on any government acquisition. No, we don't do that. But there's a chance that you may get someone that's going to look at that past performance and consider that past performance versus you not submitting anything at all. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, if you have done any subcontracting tasks, add that past performance, right? If you were a subcontractor on for a prime on a government contract, whether it's federal or state, list past performance. In the solicitation, we'll generally let you know what past performance we're looking for. But if you send past performance that you have that is relevant, right, to the contract, to the requirement that's being solicited, add that past performance in there. Because like I said, we're not going to be like, oh, well, throw them to the side because they put past performance that's not relevant. No. And the most we can do is not rate you.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. And isn't it worst case scenario if you are having nothing, you're claiming that you have nothing. Is it not written in the FAR that you shall be rated as a neutral rating?
Yes,
So it's not helping you, but it's not hurting you.
exactly. But again, there's a slight chance somebody may be like, oh, I like this. This is relevant to what we do. So let's consider it, right?
Exactly.
Versus
Why would you not?
getting a neutral rating. But if you don't have any past performance, I mean, you're just going to get it. You just won't be rated in that area.
Exactly. Yep. And I call it taking personal inventory. Folks who are kind of stuck on this point, I talk about it as the whole chicken and the egg thing. Hey, Derek, hey, Kesha, how am I supposed to get a government contract when the government's requiring me to have a government contract first as past performance to get a government contract? And it's this whole, chicken and the egg spiral that it's like we need to break out of that, mentality. And okay, sometimes the government will be so specific saying, hey, it must be, I have seen it, very few, but I've seen it a couple of times where, hey, it shall be a government contract, recency and relevancy, within a certain dollar range. They stipulate all those things. And it's like, okay, maybe your personal expertise or something from subcontracting does not fit that bill. So you're struggling a little bit. Okay, just want to call it what it is. But all the rest of the time, which is majority of the time, it's as you just explained. And so folks have more to work with as a personal inventory than I think they realize.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you have something to put down, as you said, you may have a customer, you may have a contracting official that looks at that and says, it's relevant. It's relevant enough, or, they get something from it instead of just getting that neutral rating. So I just want to encourage folks to say, hey, maybe we do have something. Take some personal inventory, whether it's you're an expert at something, and even I call it personal past performance, and we haven't talked about that. But I have also seen solicitations where they have an exemption. It's like, hey, if you are, it's called a new contractor or a new business exemption or something like that, where it says, hey, if your business itself, as registered in SAM, does not have a contract awarded to it yet, but the key officers, the key personnel of the company bring those experiences to the company, please let us know that and explain that here. And it's like, hey guys, a lot of us have that and you can use that. Why wouldn't you at least try?
Absolutely. And so, like you said, another evaluation factor may be your key personnel, right?
Yep.
You want to leverage their expertise, their skill set, their experience, companies that they worked with in the past. You want to leverage that for your organization. That's why you hired them, right?
That's right.
So you want to brag about them. They gave you a resume when you hired them, even if they didn't ask them for an updated resume where they can brag on themselves, and you take that resume and you throw that into your proposal to help put some of that meat behind certain factors that we are asking for as government contracting professionals.
I love it. I'm so glad that we were able to go there. It wasn't part of the plan, but past performance in particular is something that's such a huge struggle. As you said, you see it from your side of things as well. It's kind of the number one thing when responding to proposal writing, which is what we're talking about. Again, it's like, develop your thesis, take the items that are given to you, break them down. I say you should never start with a blank sheet of paper. You should always start with an outline. Because you know what? An outline is 50% or more of the battle. Once you have those points that you need to respond to, believe it or not, these areas kind of fill themselves in pretty darn quickly, especially if you start using, personal experience, subcontracting experience, whatever. Okay, boom, we got past performance knocked out. We need some sort of, whether it's a staffing plan or quality control plan or management approach or something like that. Okay, well, talk about the operations of your business. How are you going to quality control this thing? It's a little bit common sense. Start putting stuff on paper since you already have now this outline that you need to fill in. And hey, after that, before or after, get your pricing squared away. And like, damn, we're 80% done. What forms do you have to fill out? You got an SF 1449 or you got something. Those things don't take that much time. Reps, inserts. These are all things that are proposal writing. And anybody who's struggling or looking to get started out, like Kesha said, go back to third grade or whatever, develop an outline, extract that key information. And again, you can't do any of that unless you're able to identify instruction to offers and the evaluation criteria, which is why that's paramount. But once you can do that, your next step is really do the outline. And then step 3, fill out that outline. And then like I said, you're 80% home. So that's, that's really what I want to say about proposal writing. It sounds like you're going down that same path as well. So anybody who's struggling with that, there's a lot of you, those are your 3 steps.
Yep. There is one thing I want everyone to keep in mind, that there is, like you said, Derek, there is an individual behind that solicitation that you see. There are people. There is no machine that is doing this work, reading through your proposal, going through the source selection process. Those are people actually doing that.
There's no Scantrons. We keep going back to 3rd grade, so there's no Scantrons.
No, those are actual people, right? So there is a mix of art and science to this. The FAR tells us what we have to do, but then there are certain things that are just left up to discretion of the contracting professionals to be able to decide, right? So that's where you get that art. Right. There is no perfect formula to this. Sometimes you win a contract and you do the same thing on another and you lose that one.
Right. Yes.
I mean, it's just a part of the process. What I will tell you is you have to know your industry and you have to know your business. You're in business to make money, right? And when you got in business, you should already have your fee for service chart. You should know what you're charging.
Yep.
You should know your mission, your vision, your core values, your management approach. All of that should be a part of your business anyway.
Yes.
So it's not just for government contracting. So we're not asking you for anything that you shouldn't already be doing in your business every day.
That's so good. That's so good.
I realize people find it difficult when you're in business just to get a government contract. Then it becomes difficult. But if you're already in business and government contract is just a way for you to extend your business portfolio, then it's a little more easier.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are starting out and you're trying to, just have a quote unquote GovCon business, that's fine. But as Kesha said, you still need to have all this stuff figured out. There was no hall pass. Okay, you didn't go B2B or B2C with it. You're just going straight B2G. Okay, it may be a little bit harder, but folks do it. We had folks in our group last year in the busy season won their first contract, and they just started their business a couple of months prior. We just had an interview with Florentina, who just off of watching the channel, she won her first janitorial contract, and she didn't do anything in the commercial space. And I say all of that to say, but you know what? For example, Florentina, she knew her stuff. Mm-hmm. She knew how she wanted to price it. She knew how she was going to perform on the contract. So if you can do it without having it, because like I said, I'm not trying to discourage anybody, then that's fine. But there is no hall pass for knowing your business. And I never actually looked at it that way, Kesha. But now that you say it, I mean, it's just the puzzle piece fits in perfectly. You're not really, you contracting is not really asking for anything truly over and above from what you probably should already have in a business anyways. This is just a supplemental customer in addition to your business model and your strategy. It's not, man, I got to do all this stuff for government contracting. It's like, no, you should have all this stuff already figured out, at least most.
Absolutely. And that's what we run into a lot. A lot of customers, especially when I'm doing things with SBA or where you're giving vendor days or orientations for my organization. And people are like, well, how do I do pricing? Well, how do you price your regular customers? Right?
Yeah, like we can't do that for you, right? Like I can't teach you how to price your business. I don't know. I don't know your overhead. I don't know your G&A rate.
Exactly. If you already have a fee schedule that you're using, you already know your G&A, you already know your overhead. Consider all of those things when pricing for the government. I notice a lot of vendors, they like to inflate their prices for the government. And that's how you end up pricing yourself out of the competitive range. Absolutely. Go with your normal prices.
Yeah. And I mean, if you do that forces you to think. I mean, if you're going to put a price, you're going to have a fee schedule figured out. it forces you to think, because you're not going to like just make up a number. You have to always back into a number, right? So that's going to force you to think, okay, how are we going to perform the job? What are we going to need? Things like where logistics, all these things that ultimately affect your price. So if you're being forced to think ahead of time, which you should be, and you should be bringing that to, say, a solicitation, then when you read a solicitation and something is not completely in a line with the way that your approach and your pricing was figured out, well, hey, maybe there's an opportunity there, because maybe you do things in maybe a more advantaged way than contracting is trying to procure. Well, now you have a differential advantage. Or if things are going in the other direction, you can submit RFIs and questions to contracting to clarify, and maybe you need to adjust your pricing, but all because you were forced to think and put something down on paper in terms of a pricing schedule. Were you able to, come up with those questions and realize, then you can see what's, being said in the performance of work statement, the PWS, and say, hey, is this different or the same of what I'm trying to do? And then react accordingly. If you don't have any of that, though, you're kind of just reading it and you're taking the government's word for it should be done this way, but really it should be the other way around. The government's relying on you to be the expert, and maybe you need to dig your heels in and push back on contracting and say, hey, actually, it would be better to be done this way, or let me give you an alternate proposal, or have you thought of it, like this? And this kind of, I wanted to talk about market research. So I guess we're very much segueing there, because that's so much of what market research is supposed to be about, to kind of see, hey, who in the industry is able to perform this? This is kind of what we're thinking. Give us your feedback. Help us with this acquisition strategy. Kesha, could you talk a little bit about the importance of market research?
There are several ways we as contracting professionals conduct market research. And everyone's familiar with the one. We like SAM. I'm just saying, we like SAM. And here's a catch that most people don't know. So when I was actually performing contract work, like writing contracts, I had a very, very difficult time finding vendors for certain requirements. And I would go into SAM and I would put in the NAICS code and I would see what populates, and I would narrow it down to what the area I was in. And I would see like three vendors.
Wow,
and I'm
that's
like,
easy for me even to hear. Wow.
Clearly there are more. Something is out of whack.
Yeah.
And so I would then go to the dynamic small business search, and I would put it in again, and then I would see one vendor that was 8.8. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know there are several vendors or businesses in this area that are operating in this field. Why aren't they populating?
Right.
Oftentimes what was happening is the vendors were not making their SAM profile public.
Yes.
So if it's private, that means I have to log in with my user and password to find you. I'm going to give you a tip. All of us aren't doing that. It's just, all of us aren't doing that. So the best thing to do is to make yourself public, so that when we're going out conducting market research, just trying to find vendors, you show up. And I also realized that a lot of vendors weren't syncing their SAM registration to their SBA registration, right?
The DSBS,
As you go through SAM, it's going to prompt you to also register for SBA, and that'll populate into their database.
Yep.
So a lot of vendors were skipping that part. So sometimes especially when I had an acquisition that was a set aside, I'm looking for specific vendors, right? I'm looking for 8A vendors, veteran-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned vendors, women-owned businesses. So I'm just going to go to the dynamic small business dynamic search tool. And I'm going to look. Vendors weren't being in that tool either. So I'm like, okay, they're making this real difficult. So let me just go on GSA and see what I can find. So those are some ways that happens, right? So my thing now is, lately I've been training contract professionals on how to conduct market research and the various ways that we can go about seeking vendors. But you also have to do your part and make yourself available. Be seen. You have to want to be seen. So we'll do GSA, we do SAM, we do SBA during these the dynamic small business search. We do Google searches. Those are the easiest and fastest ways to conduct market research, right? Every now and then you may get a sources sought out there, but we generally don't put do sources sought unless the item or the requirement is real intricate, and we know that we aren't going to get a lot of we don't think we're going to get a lot of proposals back in response to that requirement. But most things aren't that difficult, right? Aren't that technical, and we know that we're going to get at least 2, 3, 4 vendors. So at that point, there's no need for a sources sought. Oh yeah, by the way, sources sought means more paperwork I have to do and type up to get that sources sought published. Remember, it's another absolutely. We're trying to take, oftentimes, look, to be honest, we're trying to take the easy way out too. I'm just being honest. So if you could be seen, if you're going by your the contracting offices in your area that are buying what you're selling, you're touching bases with them, you're checking in every other month, dropping off your capability statement, just going in and say, hey, I'm here, just making sure I just was in the area and I stopped by and I just wanted to come by and say hello to you guys. You pick up a phone, you say, can I get on your schedule? And I just want to, you may not be purchasing anything in my area right now, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about what my organization can bring to your organization. 10 minutes is all you need, because they're not really trying to give you a whole bunch of time. So 10 minutes, if you have 10 minutes to get on their schedule, you can do a Zoom, you can do a phone call. That's the best way. I get emails. Oh, and you wouldn't imagine how many I get capability statements emailed to me. It's not my preferred method. It might be someone's preferred method. It is just not my preferred method, because I cannot put a face to that email capability statement. I can't. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Derek.
No, please continue, because I never get to talk about this. This is awesome.
So when you're emailing that capability statement to me, it's filling up my inbox. And like many of my counterparts, it's filling up their inboxes. So some of them, to be honest, they delete them. Not to say that you shouldn't stop sending them. Keep sending them, because some of us are actually looking at those. But you should definitely, if you have time, if you have a contracting office in your area, swing by. Just say, I'm here. I was in the area. I'm just poking my head in. I wanted to stop by and say hi, drop you off this capability statement, just in case you have a need, a requirement comes up in the future. I just want to let you know that we're local and you can reach out to us. Yeah.
I'm all about synergy, and it's like, don't get stuck on doing something just one certain way, because I totally agree. Don't just email. There's nothing wrong with emailing. I encourage you to create some sort of campaign if you're targeting an agency and you're working backwards from your targets, but you got to hit it from all ends. So you're just getting started with the email, but then you're following up. If you can stop by or stopping by, you're getting on the phone to see who is the right person to talk to. And hey, if they just push you off to the OSDBU or a small business person, that's cool, but don't let it stop you. Keep going, and keep taking it from there, from whatever angle you can kind of get in. Because remember, guys, as Kesha's saying, she's going through all this work just to find you. Because she has a job that she has to do, or the contracting officers that she's teaching has a job that they need to do. So make their jobs easier, and don't just say, okay, I'm registered in SAM, and now you're going to kick back. And maybe you send out an email for a capability statement, and now you're going to kick back, because it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And it's always like in any sales profession, it's always about the follow-up. It's not the first touch. It's not the second touch. It's the 9th touch. It's the 13th touch, or maybe the 7th, that you're staying in front of somebody. And we talk about a lot about like seasonality versus, trying to do something like that, say in October or November versus like July, August, or September. I mean, there's a very different type of thing going on, just because government contracting is extremely seasonal. people have their budgets at different time of the year. They know what they're buying at different times of the year. And, sometimes people are just on vacation, or you don't know what. You can't take anything personal, and you can't get demoralized because you made one phone call or you sent one email. It's a synergy. You got to take all these approaches. And you're hearing it firsthand, guys, from Kesha, that this is what she's telling you to do. So I would definitely take notes and make that part of the strategy.
Yep.
Sources sought, you also touched on, but kind of coming back real quick, I wanted to ask you, so if you're not putting out that sources sought and you're doing your market research, like those ways that you described, going beta.sam or DSBS, or going on to Google, right? What are you doing at that point? Are you reaching out to vendors just at that point saying, hey, we have a forthcoming solicitation. Are you interested? Are you just emailing one of them? What is the process during that market research stage if you're not putting out a sources sought and instead you're using these other forms of market research? Because I never get to talk about this on the channel. And I'd be thrilled to hear, and I think everybody's ears are perked up right now saying, like, okay, what should I do if a contracting officer is doing this?
So what I generally do, right, is if we get a requirement and I already know that there are several vendors, because my preliminary market research is going to help me identify whether I need to put out a sources sought. So that me going on Google, me looking at SAM, me going to the dynamic small business search, all of that is part of my preliminary market research, right? That's what I'm going to do initially to be able to identify, hey, can somebody really do what it is that I need done, right? Is somebody out there already that can perform the work? And not only can I find one person, can I find 3 or 4 people that can do it? Right. And so if I go through that now, I'm looking at web pages. If I'm Googling, I'm looking at their web page, and I'm going through the web page from the services they provide. I'm looking at their homepage to be able to glean from that whether or not I think that particular organization can perform. If they can, that does not mean I'm going straight to them. That just gives me an idea that somebody out there can perform the work. So now I can post, right, my synopsis and solicitation directly as an opportunity. I don't need the sources sought. I don't need to post the sources sought. Sources sought is generally when you don't have an idea if there's anyone out there that can, you're unsure if someone can perform on the requirement that you're going to be releasing in the future.
And it's a lot about small business, right? It's seeing if there's, because they can always go full and open and say, open it up to anybody because, hey, small business could not, and then you get like PCR stepping in saying, no, small businesses can perform this. Why aren't you responding to market research? They're giving this dollars to, these large companies when small businesses should be doing this. I never talk about PCRs, the procurement center representatives, but
absolutely,
it's their whole job. Yeah,
absolutely. We call your PCR. We call the PCRs. We call PTAC. That's a part of our market research as well. We contact the SBAs and the districts in our area to see if there's anyone out there. So you definitely want to be in tune with those organizations as well, because we're looking, we're trying to, at least. I know I am. And I want you to be found. I do. I want you to be found, but I don't want to have to dig under 5 million rocks to find you.
Exactly. So guys, market research, all right? If there's a sources sought, it's with an agency you're targeting, please respond to it. Also, though, not only that, right? Because not all of it's going to sources sought. You may not have that opportunity if they're doing market research, if contracting is doing market research on sam.gov. Make sure your profile is searchable. If you don't know what we're talking about with that, when you completed your SAM registration, your entity registration in sam.gov, you clicked a button that allowed your profile to be searchable or not. If you're not sure, go back and update your entity details, log into your MySam account, scroll through pages. I have no idea what page it's on, but look until you find that question. It's worth your time. It's going to make the difference between being found and not being found. And then also, on, I believe it's the second page before the last of your SAM entity update, there is a rectangle white gray box that says Sba Profile. This is where SAM is linking you to your dynamic small business search profile. I already have a video on this, but as Kesha said, she's trying to do market research, and it's not always through sources sought. It's just sometimes through these two different avenues. And if you're not being found through these, it's like low-hanging fruit. You've got to turn the switch on, complete your DSBS profile, put in your keywords, write in a capabilities narrative, let them know the set-asides you have. And that's the other thing. I see a lot of companies that are 8A, they're not putting 8A in their SAM profile.
Yep.
And it's like, oh my goodness, why would you not do that? And the same for the DSBS profile. So all that to say, hey, we talked about proposal writing. We took a minute to talk about market research just to put yourself out there and let you be found, right? If you're not doing these things and you're not sure about it, when you leave this video today, go and double check on those things. It's like a low-hanging piece of fruit. It's a very low-hanging piece of fruit for you to go check your profile. And hey, that does not mean contracts are going to start coming through the door, but it's a box that you absolutely must check.
Absolutely.
So, Kesha, I know that we've kind of gone all over the place here, and I absolutely loved it. I think we got into so much great stuff. I kind of want to, come back to just kind of one final question here for you, whether it's a piece of advice or where to improve. You have the mic right now. We're talking to our channel, our audience, our community, new small business owners, folks who are in the space. Maybe they're lost, they're struggling. Is there something that you could say as a parting thought, whether, again, it's a piece of advice or 2 cents, that, walking away today, you think would benefit them for the better?
I would say reach out to PTAC and SBA in your area. Now, I understand that it's different no matter where you go. Believe me, I do. Start there first. Because you never know until you start there, right? So start with them first. And if they cannot assist you, then you move on to some of the other avenues. But I would definitely tell you to start there first. And another tip I would definitely give is have your fee for service together. That is key because you want to be able to respond to a solicitation quickly. And oftentimes, especially with the low-hanging fruit, the LPTAs, that's that low-hanging fruit. Yep. The majority of that is your price proposal. So you have to be able to identify your pricing. So if you already have your fee schedule identified, it's easier to get to your pricing on those proposals.
Kesha, kind of interrupt you real fast too, because I know there's going to be at least one person, maybe 10, maybe 100 asking this question, because we never actually talk about it in these terms of a fee schedule. Could you just really quickly, when you're saying fee schedule, I know we identified, profit, G&A, overhead. Is there anything else you could add to that for somebody who's watching this that says, okay, I'm going to do what they're saying. I'm going to get my fee schedule together. I know what you mean by that, but could you just maybe fill in the rest of the dark spaces so somebody could walk away from this video and develop their fee schedule for their business if they don't have that?
Absolutely. In your fee schedule, you're going to identify the cost of goods, whether that any supplies that are specific to this project, any transportation costs, of course, your labor. And we're talking about your fully burdened labor rate. Your fully burdened labor rate is if you're giving people paid time off, you need to include that in your schedule. If you're giving people, if you're paying, right, for medical, that needs to be a part of that. So anything that has to do with the labor of an individual, of your employees that you're going to be hiring, you need to make sure that all of that is considered. The employer's portion of the taxes, yes, the employee's portion of the taxes that you're going to be saving, holding on to, you want to include all of that into your price proposal. If you have any bonding or insurance, now, here's where it gets tricky, right? Because you're not going to write out in that line item that you have insurance and you want the government to pay for it, because that's not going to happen. It has to be covered in your G&A and your overhead as a means for us as a government to want to be able to pay that. Because if it's a line item that's broken out and it's an item that is not allowable, you won't get paid for it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And guys, G&A, general administrative or overhead, these are your business operating expenses. And right, Kesha can't tell you what your business costs to operate. I can't tell you what it costs to operate, but you need to know what these things are going to cost to operate. And if you're doing the contract, what's that going to cost? You can't break that out as an additional cost and put that as a line item and expect contracting to pay for that. It's part of operating your business, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And there are several templates out here. Don't get overwhelmed. For most of you, it will be really simple, right? And it'll be the same things. It'll be your G&A will be the facilities, your utilities, insurance, things like that are going to be part of your overhead. If your management team, if you have a program manager, payroll, all of those things are part of that overhead cost. And you can go online, you can Google a template, and I would say start with that template, right? Because you don't want to shortchange yourself. You want to make sure that all of your costs is included in your proposal. You don't want to submit a proposal for $50,000 and it really costs you $60,000 to operate. You need to be able to identify that, and you should know that.
Exactly.
So
And
when I'm
that's
talking about fee schedule, that's what
yeah.
I'm talking about. All those things that are included in as a part of your pricing. And for a fee schedule, say for instance, you're a janitorial cleaning company. Well, you know how much it takes and how much it's going to cost you to clean a building that's 1,000 square feet, right? You are probably already have a dollar value tied to the square footage or however you're going
Yeah,
calculating
exactly.
your cost. So just incorporate that same cost when you're doing a price proposal for the government. So take your normal fees and incorporate that into your price proposal.
And it all starts at the same point of, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not an expert or whatever, you can't do any of this stuff that you're talking about doing. But for those of you that have found the thing, or you are the thing, you have the business, or you're starting the business soon, this is exactly, this is one of Kesha's superpowers. That's why I wanted to give her the mic on this one and talk about financial management a little bit, because I know it's something she's very passionate about. And it's one of the biggest things that a lot of folks struggle with. So it's like, that is the cost of doing business and your business operating expenses. You should get that squared away. Again, just like we talked about earlier, whether it's government contracting or not, this is one of those things that you need to know. But as Kesha said, you're bringing this to government contracting, and then maybe you say you've got something like a wage determination, for example, right? That's something that maybe they would not come into in the commercial space, paying health and welfare or a minimum wage based on a job occupation code, things like that, right? There's some additional government contracting things that you can learn, but it's all going in conjunction with what your core business operating expenses are as part of this pricing sheet that you should have for your business.
Absolutely.
Well, Kesha, for YouTube's sake and the algorithm's sake, I have to cut us off here.
No
I could definitely
problem.
keep talking to you for a couple more hours, but I think this interview has been incredibly valuable. I cannot wait to get it out. And thank you so much for taking some time
You're
today
welcome.
to help the members of our community. It's been absolutely huge.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I appreciate all that you're doing for the community and just educating small businesses out there.
Thank you so much. We're trying to do our best, one day at a time. So, Kesha, we will absolutely be in touch. And thank you again.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Kesha. You too.